I'm a little nervous because I've been wanting to interview you for a couple years now.
Right. Ain't nothing like the present.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So why law?
Well, you mean why did I get into this
Mhm.
application?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm a child of the '60s, and being inspired in the movement of the '60s, mid '60s, the rebellions, and I was a high school student then in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade at Mumford High School, and really kind of laid the foundation for student activism. And then when I was at Howard University, continued to be uh, kind of on the periphery of student organizing,
Hmm.
but it laid the foundation for my perspective of of Africans here in America, Africans in Africa, and Africans in the African diaspora. And I initially thought that I might pursue political science
Hmm.
as an avocation, and at some point realizing that this would have been like 71, right after the Attica massacre in New York, the Attica brothers at Attica prison, where the state
Yeah.
massacred the brothers there at the prison. Also, during the time that the government and COINTELPRO was very actively involved in dismantling the African Black Liberation Movement,
Mhm.
attacks on the Black Panthers, the Republic of New Africa, um, infiltrating the stick movement, um, or at least creating problems between SNCC and SCLC, and just uh, Angela Davis, uh, the manhunt for Angela Davis, her capture. And so just really began to see how the mechanism of law
Mhm.
was part of the government's, a main part of the government's effort to repress and oppress the masses of African in America, and began to realize after um, taking some pre-law classes, my third and fourth year
Mhm.
at Howard, they just started a pre-law program, and the sister lawyer professor, her name was Sharon Banks, taught these classes. And I just finally just kind of realized that in evaluating uh, who I was
Mhm.
as an African, and my relationship to the overall environment in terms of the government being in the United States, and that sort of dynamic, that um, I could best serve my people as a lawyer, and being a buffer between the oppression meted out by the government,
Mhm.
its impact on African, on the masses of brothers and sisters here. And so kind of felt that that, at least for me at that time, was a good way to define my service to my people, to African people.
Okay, so the first case you lost, And the first case you won, which one taught you the most?
That's an interesting question. I think that I don't know if it's a matter of what taught the most. I think that I've learned from each and every case that I've tried, whether we were successful in terms of obtaining an acquittal or verdicts of not guilty, or whether they resulted in a verdict that reflected the government maintaining its burden in terms of guilt. So lessons are learned out of from each case, you know, particularly in terms of how, you know, you kind of reflect on what occurred during the trial itself, so that you, from a technician perspective, from an advocate, a trial technician, you kind of look back and see what you may have, what you would be able to tweak in the next encounter, the next battle. And so, in that sense, you know, you kind of learn from both, even when it's victorious in terms of obtaining a not guilty, you still reflect on it and see how you can better prepare for the upcoming trial, the next trial that you have. You know, so it's an ongoing process in terms of the skills of a trial lawyer. You know, that's always it's always something different, always something new. So, you know, you just have to remain open, because ultimately you're fighting for the freedom of your client. And so, you know, that's the most
That's a hell of a
dynamic.
responsibility, though, bro.
Right, right. So you can't take it lightly, you know. And it's a battle, it's a war when you're in trial. You know, the government is trying to convict and capture,
Yeah.
and you trying to keep the government up off of your client. You know, so when you're in trial, the that dynamic is crystal clear. You know.
Okay, so you've done a ton of things over the years. Um, the NOI delegation to Libya. How did you get involved, and what was it like stepping foot in Libya for the first time?
Um, at that time in 89, 1989, I was the co-chair, national co-chair of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. The other co-chair, Sister Adjoa Ayatoro, who later became the executive director of NCBL. And at that time, NCBL had a strong relationship with various liberation movements on the continent, more specifically in Southern Africa with the ANC, Frelimo, SWAPO, and internationally in Cuba. But then domestically, we had working relationships with various movements here.
Mm-hmm.
particularly with the Nation of Islam. And also at that time, um, Brother Chokwe Lumumba was not only a member of NCBL, but he also was in the leadership of the New African People's Organization um, in '89. And the Nation of Islam had a particular relationship with the government of Libya
Mm-hmm.
and President Muammar Gaddafi's administration. And so 1989 represented the 20th anniversary of Muammar Gaddafi coming to power. And so there was uh, its administration was having a celebration of that 20th anniversary
Mm-hmm.
and had invited specifically invited the Nation of Islam to participate in that celebration.
Mm.
And the Nation of Islam organized a delegation of various organizations to come or to
Mm.
participate. And NCBL was one of the organizations, National Conference of Black Lawyers, the Republic of New Africa. Mario Wadelli was there, part of the delegation. I mentioned Chokwe of the New African People's Organization. Um, also, Kwame Ture was there. I
Mm.
don't know if he was there. He may have been. I think he was already residing in Guinea-Bissau at that time and had come. I don't think he was not part of the Nation of Islam's delegation, but he was there.
Okay.
And so I was um, fortunate to, as a national co-chair of NCBL, together with Ajwa, to participate in the Nation of Islam's delegation, and that's how I was able to go. Um, that that was my second visit to the continent.
Okay.
Um, the first was in '87, and that was to West Africa, to Togo and the Ivory Coast. Um, but um, but it certainly, being in Libya, uh, was an opportunity to see how significant a role
Mm-hmm.
Gaddafi played in not only the development of Libya um, and the rise of Libya on the continent,
Mm-hmm.
but also uh, was able to see uh, Gaddafi's influence in sub-Saharan Africa
Mm.
also, and his support for the various liberation movements. Um,
Were you surprised by that?
I don't know if I was surprised or not. I wouldn't say surprised. I was certainly in a mode of learning.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I didn't have any preconceived notions or anything like that. Um, yeah, so it uh, was important just in terms of personal political uh, growth and understanding and
Mm.
historical understanding of the relationship. You know,
Okay.
I mean, there had been prior to that some, um, and I don't know how uh, accurate historically what I'm getting ready to say is,
Mm-hmm.
but there was some um, effort to like separate northern Africa in
Mhm.
terms of the um, majority Arab influence, Libya,
Mhm.
Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, kind of creating a wedge between uh, uh, those Arab dominated nations from sub-Saharan uh, Africa, and so there was some tension at that point, but or at some point,
Mhm.
but clearly it may have been a particular name, and I can't recall it now. Some Federation of Arab States
Oh,
uh, in the mid '80s or early '80s, you know.
I
Um,
you're right, and the name escapes me too, but I think I know what you're talking about.
but yeah, so but then um, so that was kind of like, I was aware of that, but
Mhm.
not really knowing any specifics of it. And but it was clear and evident Gaddafi and Libya's support for liberation of all Africa, not, no specific concern limited and focused on the Arabized
Yeah.
nations of the North.
Okay, so I would say that when you got out of law school, what, like 75?
Yeah, that's when I grad. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
December of '75.
Okay, so I would say that the courts were, if not more favorable to being open to our arguments, at least we felt like we had a shot. Today's courts, is it a sustainable method to try to use the courts as opposed to other branches of government to obtain our objective of liberation within this country, at least?
Well, I don't think at no time uh, we should be confused that the legal system
Mhm.
is not the source of liberation for African people in America.
Okay.
The the laws never were, from its inception, designed to support um, uh, uh, quote equality uh,
Mhm.
among people. It was created, designed, perpetuated, sustained to protect uh, the European male
Yeah.
and European supremacy, and it was at its inception, and it still is today. Now, all along the way, there's been um, different uh, moments that the law has addressed the oppression of European supremacy that's reflected in the laws that are created and applied and implemented. Um, and depending on who is occupies the Supreme Court and the as the Supreme Court of the United States will, determine the impact of the laws on oppressed people. It's oppressive or more impactful at different times in history.
Mhm.
And then locally, of course, depending on who sits in the judiciary, can make a huge difference in the administration or the quality of justice that the everyday person uh, will feel. Um, for example, with the city of Detroit being a majority African city, black city, there was a time prior to the 60s that the judiciary did not reflect the
Yeah.
population in the city. But then, and so you did not have judges and juries, for that matter, that we would reflect the percentage of the black population in Detroit. But then in the late 60s, early 70s, which reflected a time of agitation against the status quo, um, and different levels of organizing to change the impact of laws, and not only in the courts but also in housing,
Mhm.
in education, in employment. All these things were taking place at the same time to try to create a semblance of fairness in the application of the laws to black people in the city of Detroit. And so there became a time in the early 70s that the uh, the judges, the judiciary, slowly began to reflect
Yeah.
the population, the black population in Detroit, to the extent that um, the at least in the criminal court, the
Yeah.
recording court for the city
Everybody black.
was became predominantly black.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that, it's crazy because I've been telling people over the years, because I live in Cleveland now. I said the biggest difference is when you go to court.
Right.
Like you see a lot of black people in Detroit, of course. It's just. But when you go to court and the judge is black, the prosecutor is black, your lawyer is black, the court reporter is black, the
Right.
everybody in the court is black. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It truly does, in terms of, because uh, uh, they like to say that justice is blind or the
It's
law is blind, but it really is not, because it really depends on who's looking, whose eyes you're looking through. And and it's based on the life experiences of those persons who make the final decision, that are making the decision. And so uh, we like to think that the quality of justice that is being administered is
Mhm.
being administered equally and fairly. But
Yeah.
we, of course, understand that it is not. And it is because of the life experiences are different for those who are making those final and important decisions.
Yeah. What's been the most important case in your lifetime? Not necessarily yours, but just for black people as a whole.
Um, that's I don't like to kind of uh, to
Mhm.
judge individual cases, because we still, no matter what might be a favorable decision, um, it's only momentary, and and we still are under the thumb of oppression, legal oppression. And so, although there may be individual cases that might benefit someone, or may benefit a class, a large group of persons, um, right now, momentarily, um, we still, when it comes to the day to day lives of the ordinary person on the street, it's still feeling it. It's still rough. And an example of that is what I mean. Like, at one point, historically, um, in the Dred Scott decision, the uh, Europeans said that the Africans did not have any rights that a European was bound to respect.
Hmm.
Um, and that was in 1854 when an enslaved African had escaped enslavement, and it went up to and he was captured, and they wanted to bring him back to captivity, and um, and so he was asserting his freedom, that he was free, and they're like, no, you don't have no rights that you know that a white man is bound to respect. And so uh, and that remained the law of the land, and then you had the separate but equal, another Supreme uh, court decision that established so-called separate but equal facilities, and essentially saying, and that was like the foundation for Jim Crow and segregation, and that allowed for separate public facilities, private
Mhm.
facilities for Europeans and Africans. And clearly the African facilities were not given the same type of funding and accommodations that the Europeans received. So it wasn't separate but equal, you know. And so, and then, and these are just the landmark kind of cases
Mhm.
that are generally referred to. And then you have Brown versus the Board of Education in terms of uh, of recognizing that the separate but equal classification of data was unconstitutional as far as education is concerned, and that um, the um, the education systems that were separate for black and white were indeed unequal, and abolished that, and that you couldn't maintain the separate educational systems. But that didn't, and so that was in 50, recent as 54,
Mhm.
1954. But after that, we still had big problems in education. Affirmative
Yeah.
action, they said was cool for a minute, and then affirmative action kind of morphed into as a remedy to address past discrimination in employment and education. Then it included other groupings other than black folk, so
Mhm.
it was neutralized to a large extent that women were included, other ethnic groups were included, which, is just a reflection of the problems or the suffering or the state of oppression that, or the impact of oppression of European supremacy. So it like impacts everybody, you know, not one particular group of individuals. It's to maintain the supremacist elite of the European male. So, so it impacted Africans, men and women, European women, Asians, um, Latinos,
Mhm.
Native Americans, who they, committed genocide against, so all groupings of non-Europeans have been
Yeah.
impacted, and so we're still dealing with those things today. So, it's, and so we have to continue, we have to remain vigilant in our advocacy um, of dismantling or deconstructing
Mhm.
the various laws that negatively and repressively or that are repressive or having a repressive impact on the lives of everyday people, and so whether there's one case that stands out more than another case, the bottom line is the people on the ground are still suffering.
What do you
You know,
remember from the riots?
you say, what do I remember from them?
From yeah, like when it first jumped off. Like how do you find out that there's a riot?
Well, I remember very clearly how where I was when I first found out.
Mhm.
I was 15 years old, and I was over a friend's house that Sunday over on Muirland, right south of Finkel in
Okay.
Muirland. And we were over there. It was about 5, 6 of us over there playing cards. And uh, and on the news or whatever, it came across the news, and we got out and left and started riding down towards Dexter and saw the police and saw what was happening. And that was that Sunday. And and that's how I first realized, well, became aware that the rebellion was going on.
What it looked like the next week?
Um, I don't have any uh, well, devastation. I guess to kind of say it in a word, devastation. You know,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. 12th Street. The businesses. I don't know if I got down there the next um, the week after. I probably wasn't down there that soon after the initial rebellion took place, but when I did finally ride down 12,
mhm.
in Dexter, it was a lot of devastation
Yo, I can't
in
even
terms
imagine.
of the businesses, and homes too. I mean, homes. You had homes like um, that were right up to the commercial side of the streets, so homes were burned, lost a lot of residential homes too.
Yo, damn. Just
Hmm.
just from a Detroiter perspective, historically, what have been like the big moments in your lifetime?
Well, that probably was the biggest, the
Mhm.
rebellions. Um, I could say graduating from high school was a big moment.
Mhm.
The rebellion, coming back to Detroit after 4 years at Howard in Washington D.C., coming back to Detroit, starting law school, that was a big moment. Um, Also, at that time, Mayor Young, Coleman Young, was the mayor of the city of Detroit. That was a big moment. Um, uh, yeah, those were significant moments, I think.
Yo, Coleman Young was dope. I'm old enough to remember Coleman Young. Like
Right.
I was such a fan of Coleman Young.
Right.
From the quote unquote bulliness to just the love for the I didn't even care about some of the other stuff he did. I kind of expect people in power to do people in power stuff. Just don't go ridiculous with it. And dude was just a bully for Detroit. I love that about the dude.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he understood the um, the power of his office of mayor,
Yes.
and he exercised it without compromise for the benefit of the city of Detroit, for the black folks of Detroit, and which meant for everyone in Detroit. He looked out for the city of Detroit.
Man, did he? And this is a question I ask everybody that comes on the show. Has absolutely nothing to do with nothing, but here goes. You're sitting on a park bench, and God sits down next to you, and he or she says you can ask them one question. What would it be?
The question. Um, um, the question would have to, although I don't know exactly how it would be framed, but
Mhm.
it would focus on the liberation of the African continent, and yeah, yeah, the unification of the African continent, the people of Africa. It would it would be some question related to that.
At what point in life do you recognize the roots of Africa for you, and put you on a trajectory to want to do as much as you can to unify us all? Or was it you just always been this way? You was in the first grade and you just love Mother Africa?
Uh, I would say it kind of began in high school.
Hmm.
That really was when I was fortunate to be a student at Mumford High School at the time, from between 1966 and 69, when we had some outstanding teachers who had an African frame of reference, had a Black history frame of reference,
Hmm.
that really began to tweak or prick our interests in understanding who we were as as who we are as
Hmm.
as an African people, and so and began to understand that our history was more than just enslavement. Didn't begin with our enslavement here, but certainly uh, began to lay a foundation for understanding who I was as an African,
Hmm.
and with it, and at least began to be thinking about that, and to seek out knowledge and understanding, and then going to Howard, attending Howard, just increased that frame of reference and expanded it to beyond just Black history, domestically here in the U.S. and in the Caribbean and South America, but also including the continent. And so it just was a gradual expansion of my understanding.
That's so dope.
So it began then in high school, and it continues till now.
Yeah,
Oh, even up to now, today. You
you
know,
definitely caught probably the greatest window of blackness this country has seen thus far.
the what again?
I
Say
said
again.
you've definitely caught the greatest window of blackness that this country has seen thus far.
Yeah, certainly part of it. You know, part of it. You know, I think it's important that um, uh, I think it, as uh, France Fanon said, that um, each generation must seek its mission and fulfill it or betray it. And
Mm.
so, um, certainly within my lifetime, we've seen a lot, but the lifetime of your grandparents, my parents, my grandparents, their lifetimes, to them was significant also. And so, it's personal now
Mm.
because this is my, I'm in it. I'm dealing with it in real time. But if I look back, can't even imagine how it must have been with my grandfather's time, and some of the things with my father in his childhood that he had to deal with in terms of segregation and southern oppression and stuff like that. So
I can't even. And then like I hear people all the time. Well, I'm not my grandparents. No, you're not, because they actually got up off their ass and did something. You're just sitting on the internet talking shit. We gonna be honest about it. But I think about that sometimes. Like, and then I debate myself between integration and segregation, and I find myself thinking that outside of the lynchings and the nefariousness of white supremacy during that time, segregation just seemed like a much better situation for black folks. We seemed like much more of a community.
well, we were. You're absolutely right. We were. We had our own businesses. You know, um, we had more of our own businesses. We had more of a sense of community. We were more communal then, and we were just led astray in terms of thinking that we needed to be with the European to have a better quality of life,
Yeah,
and so and which has led us to just chasing after the European, chasing after that ghost,
yeah,
as opposed to looking within ourselves and tapping into our own wealth, our own genius for our survival, and that ultimately is what we have to do.
yeah. I'm not optimistic, bro. I'm gonna be honest with you.
It's coming. It ain't gonna last. This ain't gonna last forever. It's
oh,
coming.
oh God, I hope
And
so.
that's why you doing what you doing. That's why you podcasting.
Yeah, I'm just an old fat dude in my basement, bro.
Yeah.
Um, yo, Ghana. What was the attraction?
Well, I think it wasn't a a specific decision that was made by me to go to Ghana. It was Ghana really kind of like calling,
Mm,
and so how that happened was that my one of my mentors um, and teachers of Africa was a sister by the name of Malkia Brantua,
hmm
who I met on a on my first trip to Africa. I was part of a delegation that the Togolese Ministry of Tourism had put together and had invited various groups from the U.S.
hmm
to to come uh, to look at various hospitality venues in Togo, and NCBL here again, the National Conference of Black Lawyers, was invited to be in that delegation, and and I was part of that delegation as a representative of NCBL. And when we were meeting up at the airport,
hmm
uh, coming together, there was this woman, an older woman, kind of like a motherly age to me, somewhere
Mm,
like my mother's age. And I went over and we introduced ourselves, and come to find out that she was from Detroit and was an educator in Detroit. And then come to find out that she was the sister of Imani Humphreys, who is was a prominent African-centered educator here in Detroit, who had the first independent African-centered institution, the Aisha Shule.
mm,
But but met her, and we just established uh, a lifelong relationship of mentoring me and my wife now, Shakira, and and after that trip to Togo, we maintained our relationship, and she was already invested in Ghana,
mm,
and she talked about organizing a group of where she had organized a group of sisters of women her age, her
mm.
her age, to invest in a building guest houses
Really?
in Ghana. She already managed a beachfront resort. She was back and forth between here and Ghana, and but when that but that ended up not working out. The investment group did not work out,
Okay.
and so, but at any rate, um, when I met her, that was in '87, and then in '92, as our relationships, just grew and grew, and um, we were there in Nataki Taliba had Nataki Taliba Schoolhouse of Detroit was
Mm,
another independent African centered educational institution in my excuse me.
mm,
And when my uh, oldest son graduated, well, now let me back up. He didn't graduate from Nataki, but Nataki
mm,
sponsored a trip to Abidjan, in the Ivory Coast, the summer of '92, and that is the same time that my son was graduating or graduated from high school. He went to DePorres. He
mm,
graduated from DePorres, so we went on the school trip that Nataki had for its students to the Ivory Coast, to Abidjan, and Malkia was in Ghana at the time, and Ghana is on the border,
okay.
on the eastern border of the Ivory Coast. So when we were there, the Abidjan, after that part of that ended, we then went overland to visit Mama Malkia in Ghana, and so that was our first time in Ghana,
Mm,
and we haven't looked back since, you know. So and then after that, when Malkia found land to build her home, she included us in that, and so when she got her land, we got land with her, and so we built our homes in the same compound.
mm. Yo, that's dope.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's how that kind of evolved that way. So it wasn't a specific assessment and evaluation of choices
Mm,
to reside in. It was almost like Well, like I said, Ghana kind of selected us.
Is there just when you look back through cases or whatnot, is there a case that you just enjoy reading?
Enjoy reading?
Yeah.
No, I no, not really. I mean, I don't have any like, you know, um, just in leisure time reading no law, legal cases. Like damn, let me go read this case. Not really. Uh-uh.
when,
No.
when when you talk to younger attorneys,
Right.
what's your first piece of advice?
Well, I remind them that there was a renowned, iconic hero of legal scholarship and training in the 1920s and 30s, who was the dean of Howard University's law school. His name was Charles Hamilton Houston,
Mhm.
and he organized. And at that time, the majority of black lawyers were trained at Howard. Thurgood Marshall, obviously, he's one of the more prominent ones, but it was a whole cadre
Mhm.
of brothers and sisters who were trained at Howard who went out fighting the repression of segregation and lynching laws and uh, all types of government repression were trained at Howard University. And under the leadership of Charles Hamilton Houston. And one of the things that he admonished the law students with was, as a lawyer, you are either a social engineer or a parasite on your community.
Mm.
And so that quote, and I didn't know of that quote until years after becoming a lawyer. They didn't. I wasn't hip to him at Wayne.
Mhm.
Uh, so, but it was so critical and important to know and understand what it is to be a black lawyer. You know, and here in the United States, and so you have to and as a lawyer in the legal profession, you have different opportunities and choices as to what and whose interests you're going to serve
Mhm.
in terms of your legal advocacy. Are you going to advocate the interests of the people? Are you going to advocate for the interests of property and and the corporate interests? And so you either gonna gonna work to be a social engineer to change things and to protect the rights of your people, or you're gonna you'll be a parasite, and so in talking with other uh, lawyers coming up, that has to be part of the conversation all the time, all the time. Whose interests you going to serve being a lawyer? And we need lawyers in all aspects of the law. Don't get
Right.
in all aspects. So, but even when you're in those corporate arenas, how you going to craft your advocacy within that arena to to eke out
Yeah.
a benefit that will be in the interest of the people.
You and your wife wrote a book, correct? The Last Bath.
Yeah, yes.
It was about artists.
Pardon?
Was it about an artist?
Uh, well, what the last bath is about
Mm,
is most of the attraction, a lot of the attraction to Ghana uh, tourism is that people will tour the dungeons that were used to after our ancestors were captured or brought down to the coast
mm,
and housed in various dungeons before they were taken away um, on the ships to the Middle Passage to the Americas. And so the dungeons were like a really like you know uh, sort of like a touristy kind of historical attraction and spiritual too. I mean, it is very important that Africans in the diaspora know, experience, and understand the horror to the extent possible what our ancestors went through and experienced in those dungeons.
mm,
But in addition to those dungeons, part of the what happened to us was
mm,
that our people were captured in the interior, in the northern areas, and hundreds of miles away from the coastline.
mm,
And after being captured, they then were trekked down to the coastline to those dungeons. And there is one place that our ancestors was brought prior to getting to the coast, which
mm,
was about 25, 30 miles from the coast in an area called Asin Manso. And in Asin Manso, there's a tributary, a water tributary that the enslavers would stop. And after having trekked for hundreds of miles and brought to this spot, and they allowed our ancestors to be unshackled and bathed, and they also were separated the young from the old, the weak from the strong, the sick from the healthy,
mm.
and they were branded. Just the brutality continued, but it was an opportunity to kind of like slow it down a little bit, and also that slowing down allowed for many of the ancestors when they could to violently resist, and many of our people were also killed right at this area. In
Mm.
this area of Ansimanso, where they had a chance to bathe, was referred to or is referred to as the last bath. And this area is memorialized by an outer wall at its entrance.
Okay.
And the that outer wall, a on the outer wall, a Ghanaian artist depicted the trek of captured Africans from the interior on down to the last bath and then to the dungeons uh, on murals. So
Mm.
there, the wall is sectioned off. In each section, there's a painting of a particular episode of that trek from the north to the south to the coastline. And
Wow.
so And so we, over time, right after they initially was painted, within a year or two, we happened to be in that area and we took photos of the specific murals.
Hmm.
And then, and that would have been like maybe 2005, 2006. And then fast forwarded to like maybe the 2013, 14, um, the murals had uh, began to deteriorate,
Hmm.
and because they weren't being maintained.
Right.
And so Shakira realized, we had these photos, and eventually we said, well, we would tell the story using, because we had the photos of the original murals in terms of what they looked like.
Right.
And so we put together the book, The Last Bath, to um, annotate, and we put our annotations to those murals describing what each one meant, and
Mhm.
also used it as an opportunity to kind of describe our story in terms of how we uh, got there, Mama Malkia, and so that's what the book is about, The
Mm.
Last Bath.
Yo, that is beautiful, man. I truly I can't possibly thank you enough, man, for giving me an hour of your experience. Um,
Have to get you a copy of that Last Bath.
please do.
Yeah.
Yes, I need that. What is the autobiography?
I don't know about that one.
Come on, man. They,
Oh,
they, they need to know the full unadulterated story, man. Like you've done. I can't possibly cover. I don't know how many decades in an hour, man. Um, but yeah, we need a book, man. If you ever decide to write it, please let me know because I want to be one of the first to get a copy.
well, I'm gonna send you a copy. Joseph, send me your address. When you go,
Okay.
would you not? You in Cleveland, right?
Yeah. I was just back home last weekend.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I come up there. I don't know every couple months.
yeah. Well, I ain't gonna wait that long. If you send me your if you send me your info, I'll be sure to get it to you. Get you a copy.
I got you. No doubt, man. You have a good one, man. Yo, and you already know, man. If you need anything, man, I got you. I'm certain you won't. Not from me, but if
Oh
there
no,
is
man. We
anything,
out here. We out here together, man. There's a African concept and principle called Ubuntu. Ubuntu, Ubuntu. And that means I am because we are. We are because I am. So it's the concept of the interconnectedness of and oneness of us all, man. So we in this together.
no doubt, man. We in this together. You have a phenomenal evening on purpose, bro. Once again, I appreciate you. And continue helping us.
Yeah, man. We like I say, we in it together, man. We helping each other.
No doubt, man. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, Joe. Peace.
Peace. And before I go, man, I just want to say rest in peace um, to my mother. She passed away in 2020, and today was her birthday. So happy heavenly birthday, ma. I can't express how much I miss you. It was an absolute honor and a joy and a privilege to be